Part 2. The arrival. The Resolute dropped out of faster than light, traveled near a planet that glowed like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. Corvath Prime was beautiful in a way that made human cities look like children's drawings. The planet was covered in structures that seemed to grow from the land itself. Towers of crystal reached toward the clouds. Rivers of light flowed between buildings that had stood for thousands of years. Admiral Laura Bennett looked at the planet through the main view screen and felt very small. This civilization had been building wonders when humans were still living in caves. They had mastered technologies that human scientists could barely understand. And now a single human ship was about to tell them no. Ambassador Nathan Cole stood beside her. His face was calm, but Laura could see the tension in his shoulders. He had spent 3 weeks preparing for this moment. He had practiced his words until he could say them in his sleep. But nothing could truly prepare a person for standing before the rulers of the galaxy. A Kovathi escort ship appeared beside the Resolute. It was sleek and elegant, shaped like a silver leaf floating in the void. A voice came through the communication system, speaking perfect English with an accent that sounded almost musical. Human vessel Resolute, you are cleared to proceed to the Council Station. Follow our guidance signal. Do not deviate from the assigned path. Captain Greg Palmer guided the ship along the indicated route. They passed defense platforms that could have destroyed the Resolute in seconds. They flew over shipyards where vessels 10 times the size of any human craft were being constructed. Everything they saw was designed to impress, to intimidate, to remind visitors of their place in the order of things. The Council Station hung in orbit above the capital city. It was a massive ring of white stone and crystal, spinning slowly as it caught the light of the Corvathi sun. The human delegation docked at a port reserved for visiting species. The airlock opened and they stepped into another world. The interior of the station was even more impressive than the exterior. The ceilings rose so high that clouds formed near the top. Gardens filled with alien plants lined the walkways. Creatures that Nathan had only seen in intelligence reports walked past them without a second glance. This was the heart of galactic civilization. Humanity was just one more species come to kneel before the masters. A Kovathi official met them at the entrance to the council chambers. He was tall and thin, with skin that shifted colors as he moved. His name was Veth, and he introduced himself as the speaker for the High Council. "Welcome, humans," Veth said. His voice was smooth and pleasant. "The Council has been watching your species for some time. You have grown quickly, perhaps too quickly. We hope this meeting will help you understand your place in the greater community." Nathan noticed the word choice. Not partnership. Not friendship. Place. The Kovathi already saw humans as something to be managed. Something to be controlled. The council chambers were built to overwhelm. 12 thrones arranged in a semicircle rose above a central platform. Each throne held a representative of one of the ancient species. The Kovathi sat in the center, their shifting skin marking them as the dominant power. The Silithians floated in tanks of silver liquid. The Minari sat perfectly still, their large dark eyes watching everything. The others were strangers still, beings of light and shadow and forms that human eyes could barely process. Nathan walked to the speaking platform alone. This was his moment. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next few minutes. High Councilor Vetheran rose from the central throne. He was old even by Kovathi standards. His skin barely shifted anymore, settling into patterns of deep blue and purple. When he spoke, his voice filled the chamber without any apparent effort. "Nathan Cole of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Council of 12. We have guided the civilizations of this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have brought peace where there was war. We have brought order where there was chaos. We have lifted species from barbarism to enlightenment. Now we offer the same gift to humanity." The other council members nodded in agreement. This was a ceremony they had performed many times before. The outcome was never in doubt. Vetheran continued, "We offer you protection from the dangers of the universe. There are things in the darkness between stars that would destroy your species without hesitation. We offer you technology that would take you centuries to develop on your own. We offer you a place in our community with all the benefits that brings." He paused and looked down at Nathan with what might have been kindness. "All we ask in return is your cooperation. Your fleets will join our defense forces. Your colonies will follow our laws. Your leaders will consult with our advisors on matters of importance. This is not slavery, Ambassador. This is partnership. This is the price of survival." Nathan listened to every word. He understood what was being offered: safety, technology, a future among the stars. All humanity had to do was give up control of that future. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. His hand was steady as he placed it on the speaking platform. "This is our answer," he said. The holographic display activated. A document appeared, written in English and the common galactic script. It was not long. It did not need to be. The document was a formal rejection of all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, not a request for different terms, not an offer to negotiate. A complete and total refusal of everything the Council had offered. The chamber fell silent. Nathan could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. High Counselor Vetheran stared at the document. His skin began shifting rapidly through colors that Nathan did not recognize. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its smooth confidence. You refuse everything." Nathan met the ancient alien's gaze without flinching. "Yes," he said, "we refuse." The word echoed through the crystal chamber. It was a word the Council had not heard in 10,000 years. A word they had thought no species would ever dare to speak. No doubt the silence stretched on. The Council members looked at each other in confusion. Their ceremonies had no procedure for this. Their history had no example to follow. For the first time in living memory, a species had chosen uncertainty over safety, had chosen freedom over comfort. Nathan Cole turned and walked back to his delegation. Laura Bennett fell into step beside him. Neither of them looked back. Behind them, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what had just happened. Humanity had said no, and nothing would ever be the same. Part 1. The summons. The message came on a cold morning in December. It traveled across 3,000 light-years of empty space before reaching the communication arrays orbiting Earth. When the technicians decoded it, they did not believe what they were reading. They checked the signal twice, then 3 times. Finally, they sent it up the chain of command. Ambassador Nathan Cole was eating breakfast when his assistant rushed into the room. The young man was pale, and his hands were shaking. He placed a tablet on the table without saying a word. Nathan picked it up and began to read. The Galactic Council of 12 had sent an official summons to the human species. They were being invited to present themselves at the council chambers on Corvath Prime. The message was polite, but there was something underneath the polite words. It was the tone of a parent speaking to a child. It was the voice of someone who expected to be obeyed. Nathan read the message 5 times. Then he made a call to Admiral Laura Bennett. Laura was 53 years old and had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 30 years. She had fought pirates near the asteroid belt. She had commanded the first human warship to travel beyond the solar system. She was not a woman who scared easily, but when she read the Council's message, she felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. The Galactic Council was ancient. The youngest civilization among the 12 member species was over 5,000 years old. They had watched humanity crawl out of its home planet and spread to a dozen star systems. They had watched and waited and done nothing. Until now, Laura called an emergency meeting with her senior officers. Captain Greg Palmer arrived first, followed by Commander Susan Drake and Lieutenant Commander Paul Hayes. They gathered around a holographic display showing everything humanity knew about the Council. It was not much. The Council controlled over 200 star systems. They had technology that made human ships look like toys. Their fleets could cross the galaxy in weeks, while human vessels took months. They had been ruling the stars since before humans learned to write. But there was something else in the intelligence reports. Something that made Laura's cold feeling grow stronger. Every species that had ever received a summons from the Council had accepted their terms. Every single one. The Velrani had been fierce warriors with a proud military tradition. Now they worked as administrators and clerks for the Council. The Drothax had built the most advanced starships in known space. Now they built whatever the Council told them to build. The Minari had been artists and philosophers. Now they produced propaganda praising the wisdom of their masters. The Council did not conquer with weapons. They conquered with treaties. They offered protection and technology and a place among the stars. All they asked in return was everything: sovereignty, independence, the right to choose your own future. These things were given away in exchange for safety. Laura shared her findings with President Daniel Price. The president was a calm man who had led humanity through difficult times. But when he heard what Laura had discovered, his calm expression changed to something harder. He called a meeting of his cabinet and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They gathered in the secure conference room beneath the White House. The meeting lasted 14 hours. People argued and shouted, and some even cried. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone in the room. Some said they should accept the Council's offer. The galaxy was dangerous and humanity was young. They needed allies and protection. They could work within the system and slowly gain more freedom over time. It was the smart choice, the safe choice. Others disagreed. They pointed to the historical records. They talked about the Velrani and the Drothax and all the other species that had traded freedom for security. Those species still existed, but something essential had been taken from them: their spirit, their pride, their ability to shape their own destiny. Nathan Cole listened to both sides without speaking. When everyone had finished arguing, the president turned to him. "You will be leading our delegation," Daniel said. "What do you think we should do?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his daughter who was studying to be a pilot. He thought about his father who had helped build the first colony on Mars. He thought about all the humans who had struggled and sacrificed to bring their species to the stars. "I think we should go," Nathan said. "We should hear what they have to say, but I do not think we should accept their terms. Whatever those terms are." The room erupted in more arguments. Some said Nathan was being foolish. The Council was too powerful to refuse. Humanity could be destroyed or isolated or worse. But Nathan held firm. "Every species that went before us made the safe choice," he said. "And every one of them lost something they could never get back. I would rather face danger as a free people than live in safety as servants." President Price listened to all the arguments. Then he called for a vote. It was not even close. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would send a delegation to Corvath Prime. They would listen to what the Council had to say, but they would not negotiate away their freedom. They would not become another client state. They would refuse. Admiral Laura Bennett was given command of the mission. She chose her best ship, the Resolute, and her best crew. Ambassador Cole would lead the diplomatic team. Captain Palmer would handle security. Commander Drake would manage communications. As the Resolute prepared to launch, Laura stood on the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were waiting for humanity's answer. They expected submission. They expected compliance. They expected humans to behave like every other species before them. They were going to be very surprised. The Resolute launched on a Tuesday morning. Thousands of people gathered to watch the ship rise into the sky. They did not know exactly what was happening, but they could feel that something important was about to change. Nathan Cole stood at a window as Earth grew smaller behind them. He had a document in his pocket. It was humanity's official response to the Council's summons. It was short and simple, and it would change everything. The journey to Corvath Prime would take 3 weeks. Nathan spent the time preparing. He studied everything humanity knew about the Council species. He practiced his speech 100 times. He thought about all the things that could go wrong, but he never doubted the decision. Some things were worth more than safety. Some things were worth fighting for. Freedom was one of those things. The stars streamed past the windows of the Resolute. Humanity was going to meet its destiny. And for the first time in galactic history, that destiny would not be decided by ancient aliens in crystal towers. It would be decided by humans. The aftermath of Resolute was barely out of the docking port when the Council's response began. Communication channels exploded with demands for explanation. Kovati ships moved to shadow the human vessel. Warning signals filled every frequency. Admiral Laura Bennett sat in the command chair and watched the chaos unfold. She had expected anger. She had expected threats. What she saw instead was something more dangerous. The Council was confused. And confused people with overwhelming power were unpredictable. High Counselor Vetheran's voice cut through the noise. It was no longer smooth and pleasant. There was an edge to it now, something sharp and uncertain. Ambassador Cole, this is madness. No species has ever rejected the Council. You condemn your people to isolation. You condemn them to destruction. The universe is not kind to those who stand alone. Nathan Cole stood at the communication console. He had prepared for this moment too. We understand the risks, Counselor. We have made our choice. Humanity thanks the Council for its offer, but we must decline. We wish you no harm. We simply wish to be left alone. There was a long pause. When Vetheran spoke again, his voice had changed. The confusion was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that sounded almost like respect. You are either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador. Perhaps both. The Council will discuss your response. We will be in contact. The communication channel closed. The Kovathi ships fell back but did not leave. They followed the Resolute to the edge of Council space, watching silently as the human vessel jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared into the darkness between stars. The journey home felt longer than the journey out. Nathan spent most of it in his quarters, staring at the walls and wondering if he had just saved humanity or doomed it. Laura checked on him twice a day. She did not have answers for him. Nobody did. When the Resolute entered Earth's solar system, they were met by a fleet of human warships. Word had spread about what happened at the Council chambers. President Price had ordered every available vessel to escort the delegation home. It was partly a show of support. It was partly a precaution. Nobody knew how the Council would respond. The return to Earth was broadcast across every human colony. Nathan Cole walked down the ramp of the Resolute to find cameras and crowds waiting for him. President Price stood at the front, his face serious but proud. Ambassador Cole, the President said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. You have done something that will be remembered for as long as humanity exists. You have told the galaxy that we will not be ruled, that we will not be managed, that we will choose our own path, whatever the cost. Nathan shook the President's hand. He tried to speak, but the words would not come. The weight of what he had done was finally hitting him. For better or worse, he had changed the course of human history. That night, President Price addressed the entire human population. His speech was broadcast to Earth and Mars and the 12 colony worlds. He explained what the Council had offered and why humanity had refused. They offered us safety, he said. But safety without freedom is just a comfortable prison. They offered us technology. But technology given by masters is just another chain. They offered us a place among the stars. But that place was beneath them. Always beneath them. He paused and looked directly into the camera. We have chosen a harder path. We have chosen to stand alone. There will be challenges ahead. There will be dangers we cannot predict. But we will face them as free people. We will face them as humans. The reaction was not unanimous. Some people were afraid. They had seen the reports about the Council's power. They knew that human fleets were nothing compared to the ancient armadas that ruled the galaxy. Why had their leaders chosen defiance over survival? But most people felt something different. Katie Morrison was a young officer aboard the patrol vessel Defiance. She watched the president's speech with her crew in the ship's mess hall. When it ended, nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Lieutenant Ben Cooper raised his glass. "To freedom," he said. The rest of the crew raised their glasses. To freedom. It was a small gesture, but it was happening across the human territories. In cafes on Mars and stations orbiting Jupiter and settlements on distant worlds, people were raising glasses and making toasts. They were scared and uncertain and proud, all at the same time. Back on Earth, Nathan Cole finally allowed himself to rest. He sat in his apartment and watched the sun set over the city. His daughter called to tell him she was proud of him. His father sent a message saying that humanity had finally grown up. Admiral Laura Bennett was not resting. She was in a secure meeting with the Joint Chiefs, planning for what came next. "They will not let this stand," she said. "The Council has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years by making examples of those who resist. We need to prepare." The military began a quiet mobilization. Shipyards increased production. Training programs were expanded. Defense platforms were strengthened around key colonies. Humanity was getting ready for a war it might not be able to win. But there was something else happening too. Something unexpected. 3 weeks after the rejection, a secret communication arrived at Earth's diplomatic channels. It came from a Volrani ship operating far from Council space. The message was short and carefully encrypted. "We have heard what you did. We thought we were the only ones who remembered what it meant to be free. We were wrong. Stay strong, humans. You are not as alone as you think." Nathan Cole read the message 5 times. Then he smiled for the first time since leaving Corvath Prime. The Council had expected humanity's defiance to be a warning to other species, a lesson in what happened to those who did not obey. Instead, it had become something else. It had become hope. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Other species were remembering what they had lost. And humanity's refusal was making them wonder if they could take it back. The galaxy was about to change. And humanity had lit the first spark. The response 6 months passed after humanity's rejection of the Council. Life continued. Ships flew between colonies. Factories produced goods. Children went to school and learned about the galaxy and their place in it. Some people began to hope that maybe the Council had decided to leave them alone. Those hopes died on a quiet Tuesday morning. Commander Chris Morgan was running a routine patrol near the Kepler frontier. His ship, the Vigilant, was small and fast, designed for scouting and light combat. His crew of 40 was experienced and professional. They had been watching the border for 3 months without seeing anything unusual. Then the sensors lit up. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space. They were Kavati warships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. Their hulls gleamed with weapons that could crack planets. Behind them came a fourth vessel, a diplomatic ship broadcasting on all frequencies. The broadcast was a demand for immediate surrender. Not negotiation, not discussion. Surrender. The message played on repeat, filling every channel with the same words. Human species, you have defied the Galactic Council. You have rejected the offer of peace and partnership. The Council has decided that you must be shown the consequences of your choice. Surrender your fleets, your colonies, and your government to Council authority. You have 24 hours to comply. Commander Morgan stared at the message for a long moment. Then he opened a channel to his crew. All hands to battle stations. We are not surrendering anything. His crew responded immediately. The Vigilant powered up its weapons and raised its shields. It was a tiny ship facing 3 giants, but nobody hesitated. Nobody asked if they should run. They simply prepared to fight. Morgan sent an encrypted burst transmission to Fleet Command. Then he positioned his ship between the Corvati vessels and the border of human space. He knew he could not stop them. He knew he would probably die, but he was going to make them work for every kilometer. Admiral Laura Bennett received Morgan's transmission within hours. She was in a meeting with President Price when her aide rushed in with the news. The room fell silent as she read the report. "They are calling our bluff," she said. "They sent 3 warships to scare us into submission. They think we will see their power and change our minds." President Price stood and walked to the window. The capital city stretched out below him. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that everything was about to change. "Can we fight them?" he asked. Laura considered the question carefully. "Not those 3 ships. They could destroy our entire fleet without breaking a sweat. But this is not about winning a battle. This is about proving that we meant what we said." The president nodded slowly. "Send everything we have." Within 72 hours, the 7th Fleet assembled at Kepler Station. 43 warships of various sizes gathered information. Cruisers and destroyers and frigates, crewed by men and women who knew they were outmatched. They came anyway. Captain Diane Fuller commanded the cruiser Steadfast from her position at the center of the formation. She was 50 years old and had spent her entire adult life preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now that war was here, and she was ready. She opened a channel to the fleet. "Listen up. The Council thinks we are bluffing. They think we will see their ships and run away. They think we are like every other species they have conquered. Today, we show them how wrong they are. We hold this line. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. We stand here until they leave or until we are all dead. Is that clear?" The response came from 43 ships at once. "Clear, Captain." The Corvati vessels approached the human formation slowly. Their sensors swept across the fleet, counting ships, measuring weapons, calculating odds. By any reasonable estimate, they could destroy the humans in minutes, but they did not attack. The Corvati commander was named Veth Olan. He was old and experienced and had fought in a dozen wars. He had expected the humans to scatter when they saw his ships. He had expected terror and chaos and desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, he saw 43 ships holding formation. He saw weapons powered up and shields at maximum. He saw a species that had chosen to die rather than kneel. Veth Olan had never seen anything like it. He sent a message to High Counselor Vetheran on Corvath Prime. "The humans are not retreating. They are preparing to fight. What are your orders?" The response took 6 hours to arrive. During that time, the 2 fleets faced each other across 100,000 kilometers of empty space. Weapons stayed locked. Shields stayed raised. Nobody moved. On the Steadfast, Diane Fuller watched the standoff unfold. Lieutenant Amy Torres stood at the tactical station, her hands steady on the controls. Captain, the Korvathi are not advancing. They are holding position. Diane nodded. They are confused. They do not understand why we are not running. Should we attack? No, we wait. This is their move. The waiting continued. 1 day passed, and 2, then a week. Crews rotated through shifts. Supplies were carefully rationed. The tension was constant and exhausting, but nobody complained. They understood what was at stake. On the 15th day, Commander Morgan's patrol ship rejoined the fleet. His crew was tired but proud. They had been the first to face the Council's ultimatum, and they were still alive. On the 22nd day, something changed. The Korvathi vessels began to power down their weapons. Their shields dropped. And then, slowly, they turned away from the human fleet. They were leaving. Diane Fuller watched them go with a mixture of relief and disbelief. All ships, hold position. Do not pursue. The Korvathi jumped to faster than light speed and vanished. The diplomatic ship broadcast one final message before following them. The Council will remember this, humans. This is not over. Then silence. Admiral Bennett received the news on Earth. She sat in her office for a long time, staring at the report. The Council had blinked. They had sent ships to intimidate humanity, and humanity had not been intimidated. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone had stood up to them and survived. The galaxy would never be the same. The new news of the Kepler standoff spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Council tried to control the story. They said their ships had left because the humans were not worth the effort. They said the young species would collapse on its own without Council support. They said nothing had changed. Nobody believed them. For 10,000 years, the Council had ruled through a simple truth. Resistance was impossible. Every species that tried to stand alone had failed. Every civilization that refused to submit had been crushed or absorbed or forgotten. The Council was too powerful, too ancient, too established to challenge, but humanity had challenged them. And humanity was still standing. Ambassador Nathan Cole was summoned to a second meeting 3 months after the standoff. This time, the location was different. Instead of the grand chambers of Korvath Prime, the meeting was held at a small station in neutral space. Instead of the High Council, he faced a group of mid-level diplomats who seemed uncomfortable in their own skin. The lead diplomat was a Korvathi named Vethorin. He was younger than the officials Nathan had met before, and there was something different in his eyes. Not the condescension of his elders. Something more like curiosity. Ambassador Cole, Vethorin began. The Council has sent us to understand your decision. Your actions have caused considerable confusion among our people. We have never encountered a species that chose certain hardship over offered safety. We wish to know why. Nathan studied the diplomat carefully. This was not a trap. There were no warships waiting outside. The Council genuinely did not understand what had happened, and they had sent someone to find out. It is simple, Nathan said. You offered us everything except the one thing we wanted most. The right to choose our own future. The right to make our own mistakes. The right to succeed or fail on our own terms. Vethorin leaned forward. But your future with the Council would have been secure. You would have had protection, technology, prosperity. What could be more valuable than that? Freedom, Nathan replied. Our history has taught us that nothing given can compare to something earned. Every great achievement of humanity came from struggle, from sacrifice, from the refusal to accept limits others tried to place on us. If we had accepted your offer, we would have survived. But we would have stopped being human. The diplomat was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. There are some among the Council who believe you are dangerous. They want to destroy you before you spread these ideas to other species. There are others who believe you are simply insane and will eventually beg for our help. But there are a few of us who wonder if perhaps you understand something we have forgotten." Nathan nodded slowly. "Tell your council that we do not seek conflict. We do not want to tear down what you have built. We simply want to be left alone to build something of our own." The meeting ended without any formal agreements. But something had shifted. The council was no longer treating humanity as a problem to be solved. They were treating them as something new, something they did not fully understand. Back on Earth, life was changing. The fear of the early months had transformed into something else. Professor Kevin Wright taught history at the Academy in New York. His classes had always been popular, but now they were overflowing. Young people wanted to understand how humanity had reached this moment. They wanted to know who they were and where they came from. One afternoon, a student named Lisa Park raised her hand. "Professor, what happens if the council decides to come back with more ships? What if they decide we are too dangerous to ignore?" Kevin smiled. It was a question he heard often. "Then we will face that day when it comes. But we will face it together. We will face it knowing that we chose this path ourselves. And whatever happens, nobody will ever be able to say that humanity went quietly." The class was silent. Then another student began to clap. Soon the whole room was applauding. It was not for Kevin. It was for the choice that humanity had made. The choice to stand up when standing up seemed impossible. The effects of that choice were spreading beyond human space. Secret messages continued to arrive from species living under council rule. The Vorani sent technical data about council ship designs. The Drothax offered to build components in secret shipyards far from council eyes. The Minari composed songs celebrating human defiance that spread quietly through the lower classes of council society. Admiral Lavra Bennett established a covert communication network. She was careful not to push too hard. The last thing humanity needed was to start a galactic rebellion before they were ready. But she made sure that every species who reached out knew they had a friend. They knew they were not alone. 5 years after the rejection, the first crack appeared in the council's authority. The Volreni representative stood before the council and demanded changes to the treaties that bound her people. She cited humanity's example. She argued that species should have the right to their own militaries, their own laws, their own futures. The council refused. But the fact that someone had asked at all was revolutionary. Nathan Cole watched the news from his home on Earth. He was older now, his hair gray at the temples. He had retired from diplomatic service and spent his days teaching and writing. But sometimes late at night, he would stand at his window and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. The old order was weakening. New possibilities were opening up. And it had all started with a single word spoken in a crystal chamber on a distant world. Such a small word. Such a simple word. But it had changed everything. Humanity was no longer alone in the darkness. They had allies now, hidden among the council's subjects. They had friends who remembered what freedom meant. And slowly, quietly, they were building something new. The council still ruled the galaxy. Their fleets still patrolled the space lanes. Their laws still governed hundreds of worlds. But their grip was loosening. Their certainty was fading. And everyone knew it. The future was uncertain. There would be more challenges, more confrontations, more moments when everything hung in the balance. But humanity had proven something that could never be unproven. They had shown that the impossible was possible. That one small species could face the masters of the galaxy and refuse to bow. That courage and principle could be stronger than fear and power. And that was just the beginning.